Hello world. This is Jeffrey, JGB146 Blake, coming to you with another decklist video for Pokemon Trading Card Game. Uh, the deck we're looking at today is Metagross-GX. It's a deck that originally was kind of underwhelming until people figured out better ways to build it, and I'm wanting to learn it because it has been destroying some of my other decks. So I want to see how I can do with it, and I'll also be exploring some of those other decks to look at potential ways to counter this, and of course look at other matchups as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into the deck, and we'll start off with a look at the Pokemon. So we have a Beldum Metang Metagross line, and we're doing a 4-3-4 evolution line. It's a little, we do play Rare Candy, so it's a little bit heavier in Metangs than most would do with Rare Candies, but I think it's worthwhile to kind of go both routes. We'll look at Metagross in a second, but I want to make a note about the Beldum that we're choosing because there's multiple options, and basically you want the one with the lowest retreat cost of 1, uh, because we're going to start Beldum a fair amount. That's our almost half of our basics right there, our Beldums. So you're going to start him. You want to be able to attach an energy and retreat almost like every game. So definitely look for the one with 1 retreat cost, not the one with 2. Metang is just kind of a standard placeholder. We almost never use him for anything. I'm sure there are multiple options here, but I don't think it matters too much. And then, of course, Metagross-GX, there's only the one option for. Uh, and the thing that makes Metagross strong is his huge hit points, the 250 here, and coupling that with the ability to attach energy from the discard pile to the bench. You can attach psychic or metal energies, um, and that comes in really handy. So Metagross is our primary attacker, and basically we're going to be switching a lot to take advantage of the hit points. We'll tank a hit, usually survive, and then switch out. We are weak to fire, but Volcanion has gotten a lot weaker. Once rotation happens, and really once Burning Shadows comes out, it may change how viable this deck is, but we're still months away from that, so it's definitely a powerful deck currently. You do kind of have to watch out for evolutions being played, because the Flareons can make stage 1s hit you hard enough to knock you out. But other than that, and also with the resistance to Psychic and Garbodor being a big thing, it's pretty nice. So for attacks, we have Giga Hammer, which is just a straight 150 damage for 3 energies. But then this particular Metagross is not able to use Giga Hammer the following turn. So that's the quote-unquote drawback. But as long as you have 3 Metagross out, you can just retreat, discard your 3 energies, reattach them, and you're good to go. Or even if you have 2 and can get an energy in hand, that works as well. And then finally, our GX attack is search your deck for up to 5 cards, put them into your hand, shuffle your deck. This is often an early game attack, but it can also be really clutch later in the game. The problem with playing it early is that a lot of times your cards will be end away, but if they're not, it can single-handedly win you the game. Late game, it can be very helpful there too. I would argue a little bit less helpful because you can use this to instantly have all of your Metagross set up. Late game, obviously, you're past that point. However, in the late game, your opponent is less likely to be able to just play in and get rid of the cards, so it could still come in very clutch. All in all, pretty good system. We also, with the tanking of hits, we'll see that we're playing some Max Potions because we're discarding energy all the time anyway. Okay, So we also play a one copy of Mimikyu, and he's here basically for the second attack. If your opponent uses an attack during their last turn, use it as this attack. So, this can copy any attack that's not a GX. And if we think about some of the attacks that we see, we've got Tapu Lele out there that can hit for 180, discarding his energy. Mimikyu loves that. Mimikyu will do that, discard only 2 energy, and the energy can immediately be applied back on. That's a straight KO on a Bulu for essentially no cost with a 1 prize basic. Similarly, Espeon using the psychic attack. Mimikyu comes in, hits for weakness against Espeon. If Espeon had enough energy to use that attack, then it's more than enough for Mimikyu to KO the Espeon. And you can see other options. It's very powerful to be able to copy your opponent's attacks. Unfortunately, the one sort of downside here is that with it being a basic, they have to make it not as easy. So you can't just copy any attack. It has to be one that the opponent used. So that's the slight drawback. But it's, I think, more than offset by the fact that you can literally drop a Mimikyu onto your bench, get him into the active, and then use Metagross to instantly power him up. So your opponent will never even need to be playing, like, they don't even need to be aware that you're playing Mimikyu. Some will be aware that it's run in some Metagross builds, but it can be a surprise out of nowhere that just destroys things. Then, of course, we play 2 Tapu Lele primarily for the Wonder Tag ability to search for a supporter. Occasionally, Energy Drive and not having to discard energy can be good. And if you've managed to get a really good setup and not had to use the Algorithm GX to select 5 cards, you can use Tapu Cure occasionally with our Psychic Energy, which we do play, obviously. To be able to use Mimikyu, you'd have to. And using that Tapu Cure, you could fully heal 2 of your Metagross, which is pretty clutch. And then finally, we play 2 copies of Alolan Vulpix. So Vulpix is in here exclusively for the beacon attack. Search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. That attack is great for any stage 2 deck. It helps you just be much more consistent in progressing through your deck. Again, your opponent's often going to end those Pokemon away, but if they use up all their ends early on Vulpix, then they're less likely to be able to end your Metagross algorithm away, and that's fine too. We play so many copies of our evolutions and ways to advance in them that even getting them into away isn't the end of the world. Okay, so we'll expand this, look at the rest of the cards. We've got 2 copies of Field Blower in here primarily to get rid of tools off of Garbotoxin Garbodor. We have 2 copies of Max Potion, again, taking a big hit or a couple small hits with the Metagross, and then you heal fully, and you're ready to go. It's like nothing ever happened, except that hopefully you've gotten a KO in the meantime. 4 copies of Rare Candy. Some lists, I think, play this down to 3. I like the 4 just to help with consistency, but I am playing around with the idea of lowering this and swapping in some other things. Just 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher currently. Obviously, gets Pokemon that you've discarded or that have been KO'd back into your hand or back into your deck. You get to choose. 4 Ultra Balls. I need another shiny. 4 VS Seekers. 2 copies of Brigette, because Brigette is really, really the turn 1 play you want to make most of the time. It just really helps you set up faster, and your kind of weakness with this deck is being slow to set up. So Brigette, anytime that the rest of your hand allows for it, is ideal. We play one copy of Hex. I could see maybe increasing this, but most of the abilities out there that we turn off aren't super hurtful to us because we have so much HP. We play a copy of Karen. I think this is primarily a tech against Vespiquen, but I think that it might be better to swap this out and play an Oricorio for the uh, attack that lets you place a damage counter for each Pokemon in your opponent's discard. Um, it's really close to me because Mimikyu can not really do enough in that matchup, and that wins Vespiquen matchups having that card. So I will probably swap that in. 2 copies of Lysandre, 3 copies of In, 4 copies of Sycamore, standard kind of draw support, and summon your opponent Pokemon. 4 copies of Choice Band, because hitting 150 is nice. Hitting 180 is much more relevant. So we want that as often as possible. And then we play 8 Metal Energies and 2 Psychic Energies. Again, the Psychic are primarily to activate Mimikyu and occasionally to activate Tapu Lele, but they can also be played onto Metagross as long as you only play one, because it accounts for the colorless energy in either attack. I'll note too that I found it really interesting playing against an Espeon Garb deck recently. They had the stadium in place where you only had to discard, your retreat cost was lowered if you had psychic energy attached. So I was only having to discard 1 energy to switch between Metagross, and that was really nice. With that, we've pretty much covered the list. Like I said, I think probably before I play it, I'll even switch in and get an Oricorio in there. But other than that, this is the list. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today, and we'll be back soon with some matches.